What is going on to all my HBO fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again, breaking down the latest episode of HBO's Winning Time, Episode 3, titled The Best Is Yet to Come, an episode in which we officially meet Pat Riley, aka The Godfather, which, speaking of The Godfather, we also meet Jerry Tarkanian, aka Tark the Shark, and we got to talk about magic. He makes it to LA, and let's just say, he wasn't playing basketball in this episode. We're breaking it all down here in this full review, but before we dive into it, make sure you all are checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you are new to the channel, we are building something special here, and I want you all to be a part of it. So if you love early movie reviews, TV reviews, and live streams, well, come and join the community by subscribing and hitting that notification bell. And as you can see on the screen now, if you enjoyed this spoiler review, well, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let's get this video to 100+ likes, and also share the video to anyone and everyone you know that enjoy this show just as much as we do. But more importantly, once you've seen this third episode, what did you think? Favorite moments, least favorite moments? What did you think about the performances, in particularly Pat Riley, played by Adrian Brody? We got Jerry Tarkanian and his connections to the mob. Let's talk young Magic Johnson making it out to La La Land and hanging out with Norm, and of course Dr. Bus and my personal favorite, Jerry West. Let's talk about it all in the comments below. So as you all can see, I'm wearing this big ass jersey which I haven't worn in over 15 years. I literally used to wear these in high school. If you all were in high school during my times in the late 2000s, we used to wear jerseys that were the size of dresses and would go down to our knees. That was the thing. So hey, I'm going to try to bring out more jerseys as we go from week to week. But let me know if you own one of these big ass XXXL jerseys in your closet. But I get into my thoughts here. I really enjoyed this episode. This might be my favorite episode of an already fantastic season. I love the stuff with Pat Riley and connecting that to Jerry West, and just like the conversation about what to do after the game of basketball, right? I love the stuff with Magic Johnson, him hanging out with the pimp and the ladies, which might speak to other decisions he makes later on in his career, the stuff with Dr. Buzz and the stuff with Jerry West. This was just such a great episode, and I really enjoyed it. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. But before we break down the episode, I wanted to kind of add in a new segment. So I'm going to leave time code. So if you're not a fan of basketball or the Lakers or follow a lot of the basketball stuff, you can go ahead and skip on to the review portion of the review. But let's talk about the Lakers right now. I mentioned in week 1 review that I'm a big Lakers fan. I don't follow the game as much as I used to, and particularly the Lakers, but I still keep my ears to the ground and watch SportsCenter every night before I go to bed. And I watch the highlights. I watch TNT. I watch the Lakers play. And right now, it ain't good. I mean, you know, since the All-Star break, they're like 2-11. They just got their asses handed to them this past week with getting blown out by the Suns, which is, you know, understandable. They're one of the contenders for the championship this year. But Toronto was up like 30-4 in the first quarter, and they ultimately lost that game. And then just getting embarrassed by the Timberwolves, which Pat Beverly and, Karl Anthony Towns was poking fun of Russell Westbrook, or to say Westbrick. But it's just so sad to see the Lakers right now. And again, I've been a Lakers fan for 20 years. I've seen the highs and I've seen the lows. This isn't like the worst team of all time by any means, but it is kind of just unfortunate to see LeBron busting his ass every single night. It's almost like if he don't drop 50, they ain't going to win, right? And him dropping 50 versus Golden State and dropping 50 the other night, it was just phenomenal. But he doesn't have any help. Obviously, AD can't stay on the court for more than 2 seconds without hurting himself. And then, again, I don't like to single out players, but I'm just going to keep it real. I love Russell Westbrook. I love him. I love a player that gives so much energy that he does, gives blood, sweat, and tears, and just works so hard. And the stuff he's accomplished in his career, one of the best 75 players of all time, breaking Oscar Robertson's triple-double record, and just is an incredible player. But goddamn, this season has been atrocious. And since coming back from the All-Star break, shooting like 8% from three-point line, turnover machine, and the West brick is getting in his head because the man has lost all his confidence. I can't think of a player at his caliber, just the drop-off that we got in with West brick has been ridiculous. So again, we'll see. Right now the Lakers are in the 9th seed, I want to say, fighting to get that bubble position and get into the playoffs. The way they're looking, I don't know. Let's talk about in the comments for my Lakers fans, basketball fans. Will the Lakers make it to the playoff bubble? And more particularly, making it to the bubble, will they make it to the playoffs? And if they will they get eliminated by the Suns or the Memphis Grizzlies or the Golden State Warriors in the first round? Let's talk about it in the comments. And also, if you're not a Lakers fan, let's talk about other basketball news. Boston's playing well recently. KD and Kyrie dropping 50 back-to-back games, and they're starting to get their mojo. Obviously, we know Kyrie can't play at the home games. Let's talk Golden State. Stephen Curry hurt his foot the other night. As that kind of disrupt their championship momentum? Of course, he's going to be reevaluated in a couple weeks. So, look, I love basketball. I can talk it all day. But again, we're here to talk about this show. But I just wanted to kind of talk to my sports fans out there about some of the stuff going on in the NBA. Let me know your thoughts on all that in the comments below. So, hey, showtime. Let's talk about this episode as we open up 5 minutes later from last week's episode. Buzz is beyond upset about the news with Jerry's decision to quit. We see Buzz call him everything under the sun, and this is, I'm going to say it, this might be my favorite scene of the entire show so far, because seeing Dr. Buzz, who John C. Reilly has been phenomenal, seeing every scene prior to this, he's been calm, cool, collective, but he was just so upset. It kind of came out of left field. He didn't know what to do, and we'll talk about obviously his decisions in this episode, but counter that with phenomenal performance by John C. Reilly. But then you have a great acting partner in Jason Clarke, who's playing, Jerry West, and him just kind of breaking down in this scene and being like, look, I'm a terrible coach, and if I could, I would be on the court giving you my blood and sweat and tears because I love the Lakers. I love that scene so much, and I love, again, the continuation of showing basketball players, especially someone as legendary, Mr. Clutch himself. What do you do after the game? What do you do after you retire? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I love the opening sequence, which leads us into Magic Johnson saying goodbye to his family in Michigan. And he's ready to play basketball, but he's going to have some interesting interactions in this episode. But again, that first opening scenes there was really something that kind of stood out to me, and I really enjoyed it. So let me know what you all thought about the opening as we kind of break down the rest of the show. What I'm going to do here, and again, time codes will be in the description, I just want to kind of break this review down in the 3 different plots that we got in this episode. Pat Riley being one of them, obviously. We get the stuff that we have going on with the new coach and also Magic Johnson. So that's how we're going to handle this review. So let's go ahead and start off with the former NBA player for the Rockets, the Suns, and the Lakers for 5 years. We're talking Patrick James Riley, played by Adrian Brody, as he's going up to the arena, and the security guard won't let him in. And just some bullshit right off the bat. I love the persona. I love the portrayal of Adrian Brody. Big fan of his, but even a bigger fan of who he was playing, which is Pat Riley, aka the Godfather. I have been a fan since I was a little kid. Seeing him, I was too young to see him coaching the Lakers, but I saw when he was coaching the Knicks, and during that time and how they played and the physicality that he brought to that team, and then transition to him winning a championship with Shaq and Dwayne Wade and Wade County, and him obviously being executive of the Miami Heat at this time. So I love Pat Riley. I love his swagger. I love his, the hair being pinned back, his kind of gangster persona. I'm such a big fan of his, and I love that this episode kind of shined a light on, again, and I know this show is fictional, a lot of this stuff, but I believe there's a little bit of truth in what we saw from Pat Riley and his relationship with his wife and him trying to get back to that feeling of being a part of the game. So I really enjoyed that narrative, as we'll kind of get into it here, breaking it all down. We get a little bit of that backstory with Pat as we see him playing ball, spending some time with his wife, played by Julian Jacobs, who I'm a big fan of. I thought that scene was funny when he walks into her therapy session. But it's this conversation at hand when we see Pat meeting with Chick and him trying to be play-by-play commentator, which Chick, one of the greatest commentators. I believe he commentated for Lakers for over 40 plus years, and he wasn't a fan of the voice of Pat Riley. But again, what I love about this stuff here, and we always see this, right, with basketball players, NFL players, soccer players, baseball players, they have that itch. When they retire, perfect example is Tom Brady retired a month ago, but now he's back playing for the Bucs. So it's always like that conversation when you see these athletes. They struggle to find that position in the world. They were at such a high point. And it's just like, what do I do now? And you see a lot of the times, more so than not, they find some way back into their old sport, right? Whether it's commentating, whether it's coaching, whether it's being an owner or, whatever the case may be, an ambassador of a team. So I kind of love that they throw in that narrative, like Pat's trying to find a way in life and try to find those kind of things to kind of make him happy, which, obviously he becomes a coach and one of the greatest of all times. But I love that narrative and kind of paralleling that to Jerry West, who we'll talk about here in a second. But I really enjoyed that, which brings me to one of my other favorite scenes. It is the scene with Jerry West and Pat Riley as they're talking about the struggles of retirement and how I believe that Jerry West saw a little bit of himself in Pat Riley at the time as he's struggling to find a way back into the game of basketball. So that scene right there, to me, finding that happiness was a really kind of standout to me. And again, I'm not too sure on the reality of the situation, but seeing Pat Riley breaking down his garage and his wife having that pep talk and she telling him, work harder, right? And I think that's like a Pat Riley staple that he says to a lot of his players. So again, the fictional aspect, I don't know how true all that was, but even if it wasn't true, from a narrative perspective in the show, really good character stuff and a really good character arc, but more importantly, Adrian Brody as Pat Riley, as the Godfather. I really enjoyed that stuff. So let me know what you all thought of the Pat Riley stuff, the performances, the stuff that we got with him trying to find happiness. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments as we move on to the next plot of this episode, which is the search for the new coach. As we cut to Bus, who again has lost it at this point as he's struggling to find a new coach for the team. And this is where he brings in the idea of bringing in Jerry Tarkanian, aka Tark the Shark of UNLV, winning 242 plus wins between the years of 1973 and 1992. Little fun fact, he was, even though he didn't decide to be a coach for the Lakers, he did inevitably become a coach of an NBA team, the San Antonio Spurs, and he happened to be the head coach, and under him was Greg Popovich. So I thought that was a pretty cool little fun fact there. But getting back into it, we learn more about Mr. Tark the Shark as he has many violations under his belt, as they kind of allude to him maybe giving some college recruitments a little bit of an extra motivation to come up play for his team, which might actually tie to the mafia angle a little bit later. But getting into it, we see that Jerry learns about the meeting between with the Lakers head executives and Jack McKinney, played by Terry Latz. And Jack is someone I'm very familiar with. If you all do not know Jack, I don't want to spoil anything for those that are new to the show and don't know what's going to happen next, but let's just say he was a very up-tempo coach, and some may say he is responsible for the Showtime Lakers. And I'll just kind of leave it at that because, again, I don't want to spoil what's going to happen in future episodes, but I love his introduction to the show. But back to Bush trying to get Jerry to coach the Lakers, offer him $750,000 per season, making him the highest paid coach in the NBA. He throws in a Rolls Royce, and we see the mafia connections, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, just seeing Jerry Buss doing anything and everything to try to find a coach, even finding a coach that might not be the best fit, but he in his mind is just like scrambling to try to find answers. And again, we'll talk about the mafia and how that ties to Jerry a little bit later. But let's cut to one of my favorite plots of this episode, and that was Norm and Magic, as Magic eats his pride and meets with Norm, who gives him tips on his style, his hair, and just kind of showing him the ropes, right? And I love that moment because it kind of, you would think from the way that the show kind of presents itself that Norm, knowing that Magic is going to probably replace him anytime soon, and Norm was a great player in his own right, but I just love showing that kind of the older player teaching the younger player the ropes of the game. You hear it all the time, whether it's people like my favorite player of all time is Kobe Bryant, him giving, tips to DeMar DeRozan, or giving tips to, a KD or LeBron, and even Michael giving his tips to, people like LeBron nowadays, even though they didn't talk for most of LeBron's career. So I love when the old heads, per se, give some knowledge to the youngins, and I really enjoyed that kind of camaraderie that they built within this episode, which we see Norm puts Magic on game regarding the owners, preaching him this dream that might not never come true, which leads us into Magic meeting with Jeannie, which I love the the fact that he thought that Jenny was Bus's girlfriend. It's like, I'm in La La Land. You hear some things. I thought that was kind of funny, but love seeing that Bus continuing to show his calmness as he learns that Jerry isn't interested in coaching a team, and we see Jenny taking Magic out to lunch again. Jerry is always cool, calm, collective, even though he doesn't have a coach, and he's just showing everyone, hey, everything's good, and he's sweating bullets. I love that they continue to show that in this show. But what I really enjoyed here, again, going back to Norm taking Magic under his wing, inviting him to his premiere of his film, and this is where Magic meets, I believe his name was Zesco or something like that, and better yet, he was just a straight up pimp, which brings us to Magic deciding to go to meet up with this pimp. And you talk about hilarity right here. So funny when he was with the ladies and they cut that between his parents calling him and saying, hey, baby, did you find a church? And they show him, yeah, I had people putting their hands all on me. Are you eating good? And yeah, he was eating something. I'll just say that. I thought that was so funny in that moment there. But in the seriousness of the scene, the temptations of being a rookie, the temptations of being a black man, getting $500,000, playing for the Lakers, but more particularly, let's talk about the seriousness in this moment here. This might shine a light on Magic Johnson and some of his transgressions of him having these late nights with these women, sleeping with these random women, hanging out with pimps, might have led to what inevitably happened in 1991. So again, I love that the show has fun, shows that lifestyle, but also kind of shows and plants the seeds for one of the biggest things that's ever happened to Magic Johnson in his career, which is, leading to him to his retirement, being that he tested, positive for HIV. So I love that the show is kind of throwing in those little hints of like how things could have led to that particular decision he made in 1991, which brings us to him talking to Cookie. And I still love that development that they have in the show so far, life after basketball, and them continue to plant that seed of him always having that mindset of like, I want more than just being a basketball player, and him becoming who we know him to be today, owner of, part owner of the LA Dodgers, if I'm not mistaken, the, production companies, all the stuff that he does within the industry and being an entrepreneur. I love that the show continues to show us the beginnings of the basketball player, but the beginnings of the man and the entrepreneur and the legend that we know to be as Magic Johnson. So I'm loving all the character stuff that we got with Magic, and it was one of my favorite stuff was him and Norm throughout this episode. Let me know your thoughts on that. As we wrap up the episode, going back to everything with Dr. Bus and meeting with Tark the Shark, we see that Jerry West learns and he believes in Jack and his style of play, but it's a little bit too late as Mr. Bus has picked his man to be the new coach. We see that Jerry Tarkanian is with his wife. They're driving around looking for a house, but then they get the call that his right-hand man, Vic, has been killed by the mafia, and they have the little card of Jerry, Dr. Bus in his little sleeve there after they killed him, which again, I believe this might be fictional. I might be wrong, but I took that scene as his friend Vic, because there was a scene early in the episode when Vic's trying to get Jerry to be the coach of the Lakers. He's like, are you in a pinch? Are you in a bind? So maybe that was just saying that Vic was connected to the mafia. He owed them money, and that's why Vic was pushing Jerry to be the Lakers coach, where he can get some money to pay off the mafia. But I think that shows that Vic didn't get the money in time, and ultimately that's why he was killed. So I think that's more the connections, more so than it was Jerry Tarkanian throwing games, tossing games, being part of the mafia. But I might be wrong, but neither here nor there. What a tragic way to end a fantastic episode. Again, I love the stuff with Pat Riley. Love the Jerry, all the Jerrys. There's so many Jerrys in this show, but Jerry West, Jerry Buss, and of course Magic being under the wing of Norm, but also kind of going on that lifestyle of sleeping with women and all that stuff that comes with being the starting point guard of the Los Angeles Showtime Lakers. So I love this episode from top to bottom. I really don't have any qualms or issues or criticisms, but fantastic episode, fantastic show. I loved it. But again, let me know your thoughts on the conversation we had about the Lakers and the NBA. Of course, all your thoughts about this episode and everything in between. Again, I can't thank you enough for watching this review. Hope you all enjoyed it. As you can see on the screen now, make sure if you haven't already to give the video a thumbs up. Again, let's get this to 100 plus likes. Share this review. Also, if you haven't, subscribe to the channel. Come and join the community and hit that notification bell while you're at it. Thanks again for watching the review. Hope you're staying safe. As you can see on the screen now, subscribe to my channel, check out my other content. Time for me to take off my dress. I'll see you all on the next video.